Tēnā koe, sister. Tēnā wera te whare nei. Tēnā, kei te kuriri taku, waiwai ngari, wari. Oku nei, waiwai, ki te kōrero i muri i ētahi Marae kura, mana wahine. Hoi anō, me tuku mihi, nui ki a koutou, e tu ana i rungi i tēnei wahi i tēnei ahiai. Mariana, Sharon, Annette, Donna. I came here 21 years ago as a 16-year-old kid with dreadlocks flying. I'd only really just heard about the treaty about maybe a couple of months prior. I've been dragged off to this hui. It was out at in Manukau, and I don't know how I ended up there, but I'd been dragged off by my mum or a mate, somebody. And I met Ngā Huia's older sister, Te Whenua, Tui, and Tui Shortland, Henny, this whole kāhui of these young kids born and raised in the movement. When they stood to talk, they had this burning fire in them, and they spoke about mana motuhake, tino rangatiratanga. They talked about the taiao. They talked about the hononga between their feet to the whenua. Now, I've sort of been raised in a little place called Paingaroa. My parents were workers. Went over to a little place called Tikaraka on the east coast. Workers up there. And then we moved to Auckland. I'd never ever sat in an environment where I'd seen people who are just a little bit older than me so proud to be Māori, and I was 16. A couple of months later, they dragged me over here, or I came up to this hui, 21 years ago today. And this tent sat just over in that paddock over there. And I remember listening, it was Annette on the microphone 21 years ago. We'd all just had these huis about what it was that we wanted to see in 2040, 200 years on from the signing of the treaty. This was in around about 2020. So it was ages away, it was 40 years away. So all of us rangatahi as we were then, we'd been in these wānanga. And we'd finished our hui, and the likes of Annette and Mariana and basically all of this kāhui of wahine, they got up onto the stage. But it was, I remember the kōrero of Annette that day. And she gave us this blistering growling, as Annette does every year. But she said to us, you know, and this was, it was 21 years ago. We are here, we're at the forefront of this movement. Now we need you fellas to hurry up and come on through, because we need more hands to mahia te mahi. Carry the loads that are on our shoulders. She said, and this is something I've never ever forgotten, she was pointing around at a few lawyers that were in the room. It's not the lawyers that are the revolution, it's not this and that, it's the artists, it's the dancers, it's the mothers that are the movers and the shakers of our movement. We need to create space for them to move and shine. She was talking about tino rangatiratanga, and I was going, you know, what is that? I only just heard of the treaty like a couple of months prior. What is this tino rangatiratanga? I think I asked her, sort of cheeky, well, what do you mean? She said, you're asking me what tino rangatiratanga is? Well, you better bloody go find out, girl. You're all right then. And so I just take my hat off to you, Annette, and to these other aunties of the movement who have, and when you hear her talk today, that fire in her belly is no different than it was 21 years ago, because she's been carrying that ahi for all of us. And the issues, as she's rightly said, they continue and they continue. The things that we're talking about 21 years ago, that she was talking about 40 years ago, that they were talking about 60 years ago in the same place. They are the same issues, and we have so far to go. But I was reflecting, what have been some of the things that have shifted? I want to acknowledge my sister here, Ngaz. I don't know if I was the right person from our generation, sister, to talk, but anyway. But I was thinking about some of those things that we were talking about in 2020. In the year 2000. What we wanted to see by 2040. Treaty settlements were just bumbling away, and they were this kind of new thing, or it was ongoing. We were hoping that might lead to some kind of liberation and prosperity and things that would enhance our sense of connection to the whenua and remove the role of the crown and whatnot. Treaty settlements for our generation have shaped a lot of the way that we have seen our parents, our aunties, our nannies, our korauas engage with each other over the past 20, 30 odd years. When I was a little bit older, after I was 16, I went to law school, I ended up trying to hamu Annette for a job. She took me up the bush for a couple of months. We were working on mostly on the tūhoi claims. But I remember, by this time I was about 18 or 19, I remember, you still don't really know what's going on, but I remember we went down, it was a Te Arawa mandating hui, I think it was over in Te Puke. And what I saw, and it was my first real touchstone with the treaty settlement process, was our whānau from Hapu across this incredible iwi, come with cap in hand to have the Crown determine who had the mandate for this and for that and for this. In my own whānau, 20, 30 years on, that has left a real mark on the way that our families engage now. This is a Crown-imposed process, but it has severed some relationships. When I look amongst my cousins now, because we didn't grow up knowing about all this stuff, but when I look at some of my relationships now across our reanga, we've seen our parents and our aunties and our grandfathers, and there's been so much conflict by us with us. And it was as a consequence of a Crown process that was intended to rectify a wrong of colonial history here in Aotearoa. So with these processes come these unforeseen or perhaps thought through harms. Which leads me to where I've sort of landed on now, because I think that the pātai was where to from here for us from here. Treaty settlements are what they are. I'm in this position, I'm in the Crown. My view, and I think Te Tiriti is an ongoing, ever-present, living part of the whakapapa of this country called New Zealand. Settlements doesn't finish it. It doesn't start it. It doesn't finish it. It's a recognition of a piece in time, and it's a part of a process. Take this week, I've been up here for the last week or so, or 5 days or so, meeting with hapu and iwi under all those various hats. So I've got conservation and what else, heritage and environment and whatnot. Folks, so many of the conversations have almost been buffered by a question, can we engage because we've got this treaty settlement process that sits here? My answer every single time is absolutely. Because that process doesn't define who our people are. It never will. It is for a particular purpose that was intended by the Crown to rectify historical wrongs. But as a child that has grown up under that process of having to work through the treaty settlement process, all I see when I look around my generation is that it's going to cause more harm for us that we as tangata whenua are going to have to navigate and heal from. And I'm hoha about that, but I need to acknowledge that generation, the several generations that sit above me, that have devoted their lives to that whawhai because it was about the restoration of something, about getting something that was better than a nothing. And it has been a hard process. I'm thinking about my own nannies and koros and stuff from home right now. My hope, though, is that for us, the generation coming through, that doesn't shape the way that we understand or engage as a future generation. It doesn't impact. A big part of freeing ourselves. We talk about mana motuhake, tino rangatiratanga, and not. The Crown has a huge role to step back from and allow things to be. But something that we talk about within my own whānau is it's us that have to liberate our minds and our souls, and nobody can give that back to us. We have to understand our history and the harms that we've done. But the Crown can't give us our tino rangatiratanga. But we have a huge role to play in terms of rectifying the harm. The challenge for me, the challenge for my colleagues every single day is making sure that whatever we are doing today, however, doesn't in turn create more harms for my kids, our mukupuna. And I'm not sure where I stand on the treaty settlement process, having sort of lived under the period in which it has been done. But it is what it is. So where to from here? We're fortunate that we had the likes of, in a time where it was very hard to be vocal. I know how much persecution that many of those that stood on the front line got from so many people for so many years when they were talking about things that are now fundamentally common basic knowledge, and now that we all agree to. They sat and they had those kāhui of them, and they jumped in the bus, and they had very strong relationships. But for us, where to from here? We are the beneficiaries of the burdens that they carried. The way that I can engage is much different than the way that they could engage, because they fought for so much space for us to start in a completely different space. Where to from here? We are raising children right now that are grounded in their reo, they are grounded in their tikanga, taught by to them from their nannies and kuis in the kohanga reo, who are growing up with firmly grounded in any other world that they might need to navigate. Where to from here? I look to my tuakana, ngās, te whenua, those children of the movement that were inspirations to people like me, because they had been given the gifts that their parents had fought for. They normalized what it was for folks like me to be proud to be Māori, to want to hanker, to yearn, to go and treasure, to go and grasp what it was, to understand how to liberate our own whānau. Where to from here is that I look around in the pockets of our kāhui friends now, whether it be in the arts, whether it be in reo, whether it be in kuras, whether it be in the law, whether it be in politics, God help us all, whether it be in hauora. I am watching our friends who are grounded in who they are step into these roles and be proud of who we are, to be normalizing how it is that we roll, how we operate, how we think, who are some who work in the system, some who work outside of the system, and there is no way that I think is right. But the thing is that we know who we are, that our feet are grounded, and that we can engage from a place of power, not from a place of having to fight for every single crumble that comes from whomever might give it on the day. So where to from here? In a position like mine, I see that my job, like I said, is to make sure that the decisions that we are making across every single aspect of those areas that we have responsibilities for, that they, A, and it sounds so pitiful, but they do no further harm, and B, at an aspirational level, that they help remove barriers so that our people can move and come through, that we remove the barriers, the shame, the whakamaa, those things that have held us in oppression for far too long. I could talk about across what that means in each and every area, but I don't think that that's useful or helpful. But what I do want to just say is that we only stand in these positions, wherever we may be, my generation, because we had an incredibly strong kāhui, and it was mostly mana wahine, who held the flag and bore the brunt of so much violence from our own, so much violence from others. But they kept on and they kept on and they kept on. So I have nothing but gratitude, albeit that they boot me up the bum all the time, and fair enough, and rightly so. And may those challenges always come. One of the things I said, I came here 21 years ago, I've not really missed many years at all. Whilst I'm in this position, I'll always come back to this tent for as long as you'll have us, because more so now than ever, my job is to listen, to try to navigate. And here at Waitangi, this place has always been a place to wānanga, regardless of how hard the kaupapa are that are before us, whether that's between us or happening to us. And so I want to acknowledge those that have held this tent open for year upon year upon year upon year, so that all of us, mātāwaka, haukainga, whomever, can come together and whakawhiti kōrero and really pull apart the challenges that lie before us. So kia koe e te tuaine, e te tuakana, aku nei mihi kia koe o tira kia koutou, a te whare nei, tēnā tātou katoa.